TYT would like to thank Squarespace for making possible our coverage of the 2017 Oslo Freedom Forum. Whether you need a website, a domain, or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace. You can start your free trial at squarespace.com/TYT, and you'll get 10% off your first purchase.
You've just done this 15-minute VR film, We Who Remain, and it was in the New York Times, it's on Al Jazeera and Arte. VR is this frontier of journalism that people are just figuring out how to use. So just talk me through like what the film is, why VR for this subject, and like how it works and why it works.
So the area we operate in is Nuba Mountains in Sudan, which was an area that was part of they fought alongside the southern rebels, but when the South became independent, they were left on the wrong side of the border. So a war erupted that the world didn't want to pay attention to. It was politically very complicated. There was no political will to do something about it. And when that happened, the government of Sudan also banned all journalists from entering the area and any journalism from coming out of the area. So for example, in Khartoum, you can't report on the war. It's illegal. So it's as if the war doesn't exist. In the last war, there was another iteration of this war, lasted for 10 years. There's no video, there's no photos. So we've been working with local networks on the ground to train them up to be able to cover what's happening. They've covered, I think, over 4,000 bombs dropped on civilian targets. So we've been also partnering with other mainstream media organizations to get this information and these stories out to the world in new and different ways. And for this situation, I mean, you have a context where, you know, you have to sneak across the border. It's 8 hours drive through like pretty tough roads. And it's just a place people aren't going to go to, especially in a time when there's no money for international journalists or journalism at all as well. So it would, you know, we feel like we need to find new ways to bring people to these places that there's no reason for them to actually care about, new reasons to think about why they would care about it. So virtual reality for us is, you know, it's a really important tool. I mean, there's some problems with it, especially as far as distribution, but the people we do show it to, you know, it is impactful in a way that's different than some of the documentaries you've done. So for example, I mean, how was it for you when you watched it?
So it's women and children basically huddled in like a trench, and you can actually hear the bombs and the planes overhead. It's kind of crazy. I mean, we've spoken before about how when I've watched previous reporting on the Nuba, at least, the iconic image that struck me was those kids who are in the middle of their school lesson, which is already outside under a tree because it's, you know, war torn and resource poor. Then as soon as they hear the planes come, you see them rush to hide in the cracks in these caves, and the terror on their face is very real. Cuts to the TV screen, but nothing like when you're like as transported as you possibly can be with a VR headset, and you're in amongst these like toddlers and infants and, you know, school-age children who are all huddling as their parents kind of peek their heads above and stand at, you know, the edge of these foxholes and these trenches and these caves. And then when you hear, okay, they're sometimes in there for days, you know, I can take off the headset. We're not just doing this because the tech is cool. Talk to me a little bit about how this is like the latest kind of creative way of punching through.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a foreign correspondent and filmmaker in Africa, mostly East Africa, for, you know, almost 9 years now. And, you know, the hardest thing is punching through the preconceptions, stereotypes that the West and in America has on Africa. I mean, we don't know it. We've built up such crazy ideas of this place. So for the first time, I think, you know, being able to actually transport people there in a new and different way, I can talk about a mountain or allude to a person, and they'll have an idea in their head of who that is. In a way that defies stereotypes, which when it's 2D and when it's text, like it's still there. And this is like, you just met somebody. So for me, like VR, there's a lot of problems with distribution. You're not going to reach the same amount of people you would reach, you know, on Amazon or Netflix in 2D. But as far as scaling up like human presence, like I can take Mosquito as a journalist and one of the characters in the film, and I can bring him with me to Oslo and to DC because he can't go because he can't get a visa, and you know, it's very difficult for him to even get out of the place where he is. So, but this is, as far as scaling up human interaction, I think there's something there that's new and effective. But again, it's still like early days with this technology. But I think it is something different.
Who do you really want to be watching this?
Yeah.
And like at the end of this, you're kind of an activist journalist. You know, you want to use this to kind of leverage some actual change. So just Talk me a little bit through like
Yeah.
how that was in your mind when you were making this.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a unique position in the sense that, you know, the people that we have to be, who trust us the most and who we have to be accountable to is the people in Nuba Mountains who have allowed us access and are working with us to cover their story. So in that sense, I mean, there is an activism element to what I think we do. At the same time, we very much prescribe to like journalistic ethics and making sure, I mean, this film we did, you know, everything happened. You know, we didn't say go in the caves. The plane came, everybody ran to the caves. So we were really, really strict about that, because in a conflict situation, you have so much propaganda and so much is fake. So, you know, being able to show things as they were is really important, but also using activistic tactics to get the information in front of the right people. So we all, as journalists, we all want to make change. Well, you know, thinking about who matters and who's going to make the influence is really important. So right now we're trying to work with, you know, different organizations and also get in front of key actors that actually have an impact in the region. So that's embassies and that's diplomats and that's other media. You know, and this, to us, this film is the start of the conversation. I mean, there's so much more to learn, there's so much more to know, and this is kind of that initial reason to care, and then we can get into, you know, into the particulars.
Yeah, because we were talking last night about like kind of like give a shit factor of a story every time, and how you always have to be thinking about like, okay, and we're talking about how, you know, however many years ago kids were wearing like Darfur t-shirts or whatever, and it's just so, it's amazing how short people's memory spans are. But with this, like as I was watching it, I was kind of saying like, the things that they're asking for, they're like, I'm fighting so that my son is a Sudanese citizen. I'm fighting so that we're not going to be like wiped off the face of the earth. And it just seems like this isn't Syria in a way. Like, you know, in some ways, like there's no reason why, I don't know how, there's no reason why this should be happening. And I guess that's kind of like what you have to kind of constantly, without getting frustrated or, you know, apathetic, like how do we think about how we make this connect with people that can actually do something? And
I think also that so people have the care enough to know about the complexity of it. So like Darfur, for example, it's seen in the world, by the world, is like this evil government attacking these people, and that was happening. But there's also rebel groups that were there that were asking for political things. And the same thing is through Nuba Mountains. Like a lot of journalists come in, if they do make it in, and they do story about, you know, the Nubi people as victims, and they are. You know, they're, again, 4,000 bombs have been dropped in the last 5 years on civilian targets alone. But they don't see that. They see themselves as people that are struggling and striving for a new, you know, a new autonomy and dignity and respect and all these things, and they're willing to make enormous sacrifices for it. So all those people that you saw in that film, they don't see themselves as victims, they see themselves as kind of soldiers in their different way. One might be a displaced woman who's just surviving, and that's the way that she struggles. Someone else might be a journalist, someone else might be a student, someone else might be an actual soldier. So that shift is, I think, an important way to look at a lot of these situations and to see people not as victims, which I think we're very liable to do in the Africa context. Yeah.
This way you're in it with them. You're like in the story with them. And I've just been watching people as they put it on today, and they're like, there was that one guy who was like spinning around, and after he took the thing off, he was like a little bit shell-shocked, which is what you want, I guess. So yeah, all right. Thanks for speaking to us about your film. It's great. It's on. Where can people watch it?
So yeah, you can watch it on Al Jazeera Plus. Has a short version on their website, and the New York Times also has a version on the website. It's We Who Remain. So if you just look for that, you can find it and watch it. You can watch it on the computer in 2D, but I highly recommend trying to find cardboard or gear and actually watching it in an immersive way.